Om Shri Manjunathaya Namaha. A pleasant morning to one and all. Today we have gathered here virtually for the international webinar on cloud computing and middleware tools, organized by Department of Computer Science, MMK and SDM College, Mysore. Now I request Srimati Sukrita KS, Head of the Department, Computer Science, to welcome the gathering. Over to you, ma'am.
Om Shri Manjunathaya Namaha. Happy morning to one and all present here. Cloud is about how you do computing, not where you do computing. With this quote, I take this opportunity to welcome you all to this event. As we are in the digital era, the resonating concept of cloud computing is playing a vital role in the advancement of technology. Keeping this in mind, we have made an effort to organize this webinar for the benefit of academicians, research scholars, software professionals, and students as well. On this occasion, first and foremost, I would like to welcome our beloved principal, Professor Sainath Malge Madu, for his incredible support and guidance in organizing this event. I welcome you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, I would like to welcome our today's resource person, Srimati Rashmi Balachandran, lead consultant, HCL Technologies, Germany, who has accepted our invitation in spite of her busy schedule to deliver a session in this webinar. A genial welcome to you, ma'am. A hearty welcome to Srimati G.R. Sumitra, HOD of Electronics and IQAC coordinator of our college, who is an inspiration to conduct all our college activities. I welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you.
On behalf of our management and our college, with a wholehearted spirit, I cordially welcome all the participants to this webinar. I also welcome all my fellow colleagues to this webinar who have played a part in organizing this event. Now, I would like to welcome all the onboarded students who are the booming techniques of our future. Once again, I welcome you all. Thank you.
There is echo, right?
Thank you, Sukrita ma'am. Now I request Srimati Ramya SK, Assistant Professor of Computer Science, to introduce today's speaker.
Good morning, all. It's my immense pleasure to introduce our today's resource person, Srimati Rashmi Balachandran, Lead Consultant, HCL Germany. Madam has a professional experience in IT sector for more than 14 years. On this occasion, I feel proud to mention that she was the alumnus of our sister institution, MMK and SDM Girls Pre-University College, during the year 1997 to 1999. Later, she completed her bachelor's degree at NIE First Grade College, Mysore, and pursued MCA at SJCE, Mysore. She started her career as a software developer at Infosys Bangalore in the year 2006. She then served as senior developer at Infosys Chicago during 2007 to 2009. She played the role of solution designer at Infosys London during 2009 to 2010. In the year 2010, she joined HCL, and from 2012 to 2018, she was deputed at HCL Singapore as TIPCO Development Lead and Technology Lead. Presently working at HCL Germany as Lead Consultant, Cloud Computing SOA and Middleware Tools. Srimati Rashmi Balachandran was awarded SPOT Award by HCL in the year 2011, Tex Academy Excellence Award by HCL in 2015, Customer Excellence Award by HCL in the year 2020. She is certified with Dell Boomi Associate Developer Certification, Dell Boomi Professional Developer Certification, TIPCO Active Matrix DW Certification, and many more. With this introduction, on behalf of everyone, I express my happiness to have you with us, madam, on this day, on this one-day international webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ramya ma'am. Now I request the IQAC coordinator and head of the Department of Electronics, Srimati Jia Sumitra, to speak a few words. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Om Shri Manjunathaya Namaha. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Srimati K.S. Subrata, HOD of Computer Science Department, and her team for organizing this international webinar. It is the first of its kind being organized in our college as a quality initiative. I would say it's a proud moment for us because the resource person, Srimati Rashmi Balachandran, is an alumnus of our college, and I appreciate the efforts of the Faculty of Computer Science Department for bringing back our student as a resource person to our college through this virtual seminar. I feel Srimati Rashmi is the most suitable resource person for this program as she is working as the lead consultant in the same area. I request all the participants to make full use of this webinar. Rashmi, all the best for your presentation, and I wish the webinar all success. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request our beloved principal to render a presidential address. Over to you, sir.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Good morning to all of you. Very respected alumna of this great institution, Srimati Rashmi Balachandran, a lead consultant of cloud computing HCL technology in Germany. Our learned colleagues, Srimati Jia Sumitra, Srimati Subrata, and other members of the computer science department, my dear students and invitees. I'm very happy today because the institution is completing its 30th year of celebration, and already we have made a mind to invite a majority of our 30 years alumnus or alumni to the college back and take their experiences, their knowledge and other things to our students, and thereby try to achieve little more as far as the higher level of understanding to be given to the students. This is in this way we started with the other programs as well. We have invited, because of the COVID things, we could not make all the alumni to come over here and deliver the sessions to the students. But we have started with the Independence Day and even other programs with our alumni. But academic discourse is happening with a great personality like Srimati Rashmi Balachandran. She started her education here in SDM MNK way back, and later he joined a number of other institutions, Infosys and other things, as Srimati Ramya, while introducing her, she has said. And now she is at Germany doing the cloud computing activities only. And cloud computing activities are very much important here to the student of computer science, not only computer science students, everybody. Whoever is playing with the data, cloud computing is very much necessary. And of course, along with that, middleware tools also very much necessary to have it. because if we are having a operating system and we are having certain database, but to make this operating system workable as well as to make use of that database in the knowledge level, definitely the middleware software plays a very important role. So it lies between the operating system and the application running on it. So essentially, these things we must understand. So that is why what we are supposed to, what we thought of having a webinar type of thing in which already our department people contacted Madam Rashmi, and rightly she has given a consent to participate in that, and she will be addressing our students and whoever is participating in the cloud computing program of today. In that, she will be giving her past experience. 14 years of experience is not a very small thing. And the development also, 14 years of experiences in computer science. Along with that, the computer science knowledge is changing every day, every minute, as we are not only because of how to do it, this, that, all. Webinar has some positive side also. Positive side of it, in which if we would have waited for Srimati Rashmi Balachandran to come over to the college, it would have taken a little more time. But now easily we can talk to her, or she can talk to our students and principal, and rightly she was remembering her teacher, Sumitra Madam, and she was telling she is just like that only, so maintained her personality as such. So these things had possible only because of the COVID thing. So anyhow, whatever it may be, by these words, I congratulate the Department of Computer Science for having a wonderful workshop on the cloud computing and middleware tools. Definitely, this will be useful to our students as well as even other participants who are here witnessing today's webinar. And I congratulate Rashmi Madam also. When she comes down to India, she should make a point to be here in the college discussing something about the alma mater, progress and other things. So with this note, I declare this international open such. Thank you for the opportunity to have a few words. So,
Thank you, sir. I request the audience to post questions, if any, to the speaker in the chat box. Thank you, sir. I request the audience to pose questions, if any, to the speaker in the chat box. Your questions will be addressed at the end of the session. Now I request Srimati Rashmi Balachandran to take over the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Unmute your audio, madam. Unmute your audio. Yes, yes.
You're able to hear me now, sir?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction. Good morning, everyone. Now you are able to see me as well as hear me. Yes, there's no glitch in that.
Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi ಇದೆ.
Okay. Firstly, I would like to thank Honorable Principal Professor Sainath Maligemadu, Professor G.R. Sumitra, IQAC Coordinator and HOD of Electronics, and the organizing committee members, Srimati Ranjita V, Srimati Jyoti Lakshmi G. Kava, Srimati Nayana MP, Srimati K.S. Sukrita, Srimati Ramya S.K., and the organizing committee, and providing me with such good opportunity for sharing my knowledge on cloud computing and middleware tools. Welcome to all the faculty members and then the students of MMK and SDM. Yeah, due to the limited time to cover the vast use of these technologies, I would like to cover only a gist of how these technologies are getting used in the current market. So hope, this session, I don't want it to be a dry session. Let's make it a little more interactive. So at the end of each major topic, I would welcome questions, or you can have all your questions towards the end of the session. So I'll start my presentation now. Okay, please let me know whether you're able to see the slides. I'll start the presentation then.
Yes, ma'am. You can proceed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so today's topic is going to be on cloud computing and middleware tools and how these technologies are currently trending in the market. So even before we start with cloud computing, it's important to know what cloud is. So we all know what cloud is. It's, the cloud that we see in the sky. And this cloud is very much similar to each other because the cloud that we see in the sky that stores moisture, water droplets. So similarly, our cloud, our digital cloud, stores information. It stores softwares, it stores platform operations. So the cloud refers to servers that are accessed over internet and the software and databases that run on those servers. So the information is stored on physical or virtual servers. And you can use or you can access this data, information, your software, your code that is running on the cloud by using internet. Coming to cloud computing, I would read out the definition of cloud computing first, and then we will go into the details of this definition. So cloud computing is the on-demand availability of computer system resources, especially data storage and computing power, without direct active management by the user. Now, let us just break down this definition and I can explain to you what each of these terms mean. So, cloud computing is the on-demand availability of computer system resources, especially data storage. So, what does this mean? This means that, let me just give you an example. It's like almost every one of you would be having a Gmail account. So when you register yourself for a Gmail account, there is a 15 GB storage space that is given to you by Gmail for free. Suppose you use up all this space, and then what happens? You can always go back to Google and ask them to extend your memory. So you can subscribe for an extra memory for a given cost. So this is the on-demand availability of the storage. And suppose after a period of time, it so happens that you will free up the space. So basically, say you go for an extra space of 8 GB, you fill it up, and then later on, say you just clean up your data and see that okay, this extra 8 GB that I have subscribed for is not required now. You can again go back to Google and tell them that you don't want it, so you can unsubscribe and stop paying for it. So on your demand, you can extend and use it, and on your demand you can even unsubscribe and stop paying for it and not use it. So that is what on demand availability of computer system resources, especially data storage, means. And computing power. So computing power is nothing but your code that you have hosted on the cloud. So that is the computing power with a direct active management by the user. So it so happens that when you want to run your code somewhere, so you will have to set up an infrastructure for it. You will have to basically install everything that is required for your code to run. But on cloud, what happens is all this basic features like infrastructure, platform, all this is readily available to you. What you need to do is just run it. So you need not bother about managing the infra related stuffs. So that is what it means when they say without direct active management by the user. So the history of cloud computing started in the year 2006 when Amazon came up with Elastic Compute Cloud. So Amazon still remains the leading provider of cloud space, AWS, Amazon Web Service. In 2008, Google released the beta version of Google App Engine, which again, Google is still there providing us with storage spaces, the Google Drive, the Gmail, and Google Photos. So everything put together, they give us this 15 GB that I spoke about. 2010, we had Microsoft who released the Microsoft Azure. Azure is still there, very much used in the market, and it is very much trending. 2010 again, we had Rackspace Hosting and NASA who came up with OpenStack. 2011, IBM came with the IBM Smart Cloud, and then in 2012, Oracle came up with the Oracle Cloud. So there we have so many cloud providers, and how are they different to each other? And how do we actually conclude which one to use? So this entirely depends on the requirements. So that's how we corporate industries actually decide on whom to go for. So depending upon the domain, when I say domain, it can be something like banking, logistics, it can be betting industry, advertising industry. So depending upon each of these domains and their need. So some of the industries might be, SLA driven, for example, banking, trading. So it's like the SLA, when I say SLA, the service level agreement, which means that when a message comes in and the time between the message that comes in and the time that goes out, so input and output time is always strictly documented. So you cannot, if they say that once the message enters your system, it has to go out within a few milliseconds, say 10 milliseconds or 1 second, it has to happen in that way. Otherwise, it would be an SLA breach. So it is the systems that you use for such kind of requirements should be very fast. So depending upon all these requirements, the corporate industries decide on which provider they should go to. Cloud computing something looks like this, where you have a cloud space which is accessible by it's like, I'll come to the different types of cloud, but this is how it looks. You can access cloud from your laptop, from your desktop, from your mobile, from your iPad, sitting anywhere in any corner of the world. So types of cloud. This is what I was talking about. So we have three types of cloud, three main types. So private cloud, public cloud, and then we have hybrid. So private cloud, as the name suggests, is like it is private to the organization who has purchased this cloud. So they will pay for it, and they will, it's the maintenance of this cloud to a lot extent lies with the organization or the user who has purchased this cloud space. And private cloud, you can log into the private cloud only by being in the network of the organization that has purchased this cloud. When I say that, for example, we have MMK and STM, our college. So our college has gone and purchased the private cloud. So the students, the faculty, members of MMK and SDM can access this private cloud by giving a user ID and password, but they cannot do it sitting back at their home over a public network. They can do it either by being in the college and being in the college network in internet, or they can do this by connecting to the VPN of the college. So when I say VPN of the college, it is like you have to first connect to the internet, and then there will be a VPN which will connect you to the college network, and then you can log into the private cloud. So that's how the private cloud works. Coming to the public cloud. So public cloud, as again the name itself is quite self-explanatory. You can access this public cloud from anywhere. You need not be in the organization's intra-network. You can use your own internet, no VPN logins required. You can directly access the cloud. And this will be a shared cloud. So your organization would not be the only one which will be using this public cloud. So there will be other organizations as well, other people as well, who will be using this public cloud. Maybe the same APIs as well, but your piece of code would remain a little segregated. So it would be like a same container. The cloud would be the same. Your containers would be different. Now coming to hybrid cloud. Hybrid cloud is a combination of private cloud and public cloud. And why it's like most of the organizations, they go for the hybrid cloud. The reason is there are certain APIs or certain web services that they want to host as a public gateway. So that would be on the public cloud. And certain data which is very critical to the organization, which they prefer to keep on the private cloud. And then they put this together and they subscribe for a hybrid cloud. And private clouds are usually expensive because it is customized and configured as per the organization's need. Public cloud is a little more, cheaper compared to the public private cloud, because there are multi-tenants. So it's one space and there are multiple people using it. And the maintenance part is 99% taken care by the service provider. So it is not the responsibility of the organization to maintain the cloud, whereas public clouds are not like that. To a large extent, it is the organization which needs to maintain the space as well. So that's about the types of clouds. And that's just the explanation of what I just spoke. So the cloud services used by a single organization and which are not exposed to the public. So that's private cloud. Types of clouds continue. Public cloud. So Amazon Web Service, as I said, is one of the leading provider of cloud and one of the best example for public cloud. hybrid cloud. So the cloud services can be distributed among public and private clouds, where sensitive applications are kept inside the organization's network, which is nothing but the private cloud, and other services can be hosted outside the organization network, which is the public cloud. Cloud computing services. So there are three main service models of cloud computing. We have infrastructure as a service. So let me just take you through the definitions and what do they actually mean. So in infrastructure as a service. So as I said, it's like suppose you want to run your code on your system, you need to first have a laptop or a desktop, and then you need to have an operating system, and then you need to have a basic configuration that is required for your software to run. And now we're coming, and these put together, it is called as, sorry for that. So all these put together, it is your infrastructure, your infra to run your code. So this infrastructure is provided by your cloud. So a container is given to you with the basic required configuration, and then you can go ahead and install your softwares or your operating systems, or you can ask them to configure it in the required way, which is like as per the requirement of your organization. But the infra part, for example, the system, you need not have a laptop or a desktop with all these infra related stuffs installed into it. That is not required. That's already done by your cloud. So you have to just pay and purchase the infra, and then you can go ahead with the installation of those software that is required for your project. So that is infrastructure as a service. Platform as a service. Platform as a service is a little more advanced one. You have the infra and you have the platform as well, which means that your infrastructure, I already explained. Platform also provides those features that is customized for your software. So for example, we have now most of those tools like the middleware tools, they run on cloud. So they have their own platforms. They have their own cloud hubs. So what we have to do is just log in and start coding. So that's how the platform as a service works. The last one, software as a service. So when I say platform as a service, your software installation is also not required. When I say infrastructure as a service, you are given the infra where you should go and install your software. So that's the difference between the two. Software as a service. This is like a ready-made piece. As you have your web apps, for example, you have Facebook, you have Twitter, Netflix, where it is a complete software already configured and it is there hosted on cloud. You have to just have a subscription. You have to just log in and then use their services. As Netflix provides the video streaming, your Amazon Prime. So all these are software as a service where you need not do anything. It is already developed. And this is definitely not, part of the corporate kind of industry, but this is the different types of cloud services. That's what I just explained to you. Infrastructure as a service is an instant computing infrastructure provisioned and managed over the internet. But again, you would have to go set up your the infra would be there, but then you would have to go install your softwares and all the required configurations into IaaS. One of the leading example, GCE, Google Compute Engine. Platform as a service, where the hardware and software tools are already available to you over the internet. As already said, it's like you need not bother about going and installing your software. Even that is already available. Only thing that you have to do is just log in and start coding. Next is software as a service. As I gave you the examples, it's Netflix, Google Apps, Salesforce. So where it's all readily available, you have to just use them. So the cloud architecture looks something similar to this, where you have your different layers that we now spoke about. You have your infra layer of hardware layer. When I say hardware layer, there is one thing which I want to say. Along with this, there is something called on-premise. So on-premise is the physical servers or machines that lies within the a premise of the organization. So that is on premise, where it's not there on the cloud, but it is there on the physical servers. So you have the hardware layer, then you have the infrastructure layer, which is IaaS, where infrastructure is provided to you, storage is provided to you, and you can go ahead, install your softwares and start using it. Platform layer, PaaS, where the softwares are also given to you, you have to just use them. Then you have the application layer, SaaS, where you have the business apps, web apps, which is all readily available to you. You can just straight away start using it. You need not do any kind of coding. How do you access them? You access them through any of your devices, laptop, desktop, your phone, iPods. So you just use the internet, data or Wi-Fi, and connect to the cloud, and you can start using them. So as an end user, when I talk about the corporate related way of working, so we usually have these APIs which are hosted on these clouds, through which we connect to the API connects to the cloud, and then we access the information. That's how it goes. And as a software developer, as I said, it's like if your organization has purchased the PaaS, then you would be provided with the user ID and password. Basically, there will be two levels of authentication. So one would be your user ID and password. The second one would usually be a like a ping ID, which would come to your mobile. So you would have to map or pair your mobile with your platform page. So there will be a QR code provided to you on the platform page, and you would have to install the Ping ID app into your mobile. And then when you log in for the first time, the QR page would appear where you have the QR code. You have to scan it using your mobile, whichever mobile you would be using, and then it will get paired. So basically the platform PaaS page and your mobile will get paired. So that's the second level of authentication. And every time you log in fresh, you would give your user ID and password, and then there will be the second page where it will trigger one message to your mobile where you have to authenticate it. So that's the two level of authentication, which usually happens for all these cloud when you're using cloud. And the cloud basically have their own security systems, and it is very highly secured because it's very easy to hack something which is out there. So it's not like your physical servers, which is preserved in your own organization. When it is out there on cloud, so they have to take care of the security. So as I said, it's like there are multiple layers of security. The good part is you need not bother about it. So when we go with the physical servers, it is the responsibility of the organization to take care. So at a organization intra level, organization's network layer will have a level of, or one layer of security, and the servers also should have security systems, which is the responsibility of the organization. But here that entire part has been taken care by the cloud provider. Now how cloud is, in today's world, basically most of the organizations go for the cloud computing, and they prefer to use cloud. The reason for that is When we go with physical servers, what happens is, as I said, it is the responsibility of the organization to maintain the servers, and it is very, very expensive. So when I started off with my career, we did not use cloud, we used physical servers, and these physical servers come with an EOL, end of life. So usually if it is application critical like banking, they give a validity of just 5 years. So we bring in the servers which is a empty box, and then we have to install everything into the servers. And when I say everything into the server, it is not just one server, because your data is so huge. It is a corporate world, so your data will be very, very huge. And you have the software that needs to be installed where you do the coding. You would have to have another server for your database. You would have to have one more server for your network, or a transport layer, basically, not the network layer, the transport layer. So how the communication happens. So at least a minimum of 3 servers for each of these purpose. And then you need to have a DR, which is disaster recovery. Suppose, for example, the server went down completely, then what would you do? Your business should not go down, right? So we would have the same 3 set of servers, similar ones configured, which would have the same configurations, and which would be used in case of disaster recovery. And every time we put a code into server 1, we should also ensure that it goes to server 4. So all these are the responsibility of the people who are working in that particular project. The load balancing setup, the fault tolerance setup, installation of everything, putting all this into the network layer, which is actually too much of a work, because when you're setting up something at that level, you would have to talk to the infra team, where our infrastructure layer is already configured and taken care of. So that part was actually done by us, where we used to go behind the network team and tell them that, okay, we have these new servers, how do you connect to the network? And we will have to procure IP addresses. They will give us, that is where your wide IP, VIP, big IP, all these comes into picture. So we had to sit with the network team, get all these server IPs configured, and then we had to set up the folders, we have to set up all the permissions, we had to install everything, and then migrate the code into each of these servers. So it was like too much of work. This was called, usually it's like called as tech refresh projects. So when a tech refresh project comes, we used to be it's not a happy thing. It's like too much of work, and at the end of the day, there is zero credit to it, because it is part of the maintenance. So we are not doing anything new. There is no revenue, there is no one who is investing into it, or it's a new business requirement where you would get extra money for doing this. It's part of the maintenance, and that maintenance cost used to be really high, and the maintenance work also used to be really high. So that entire thing is now taken care by the cloud. We need not bother about it. There is new versions coming in, there are new patches, there are new security patches, no problem. As a user, I need not bother about it. As an organization, my organization need not bother about it. The cloud will take care. So that is one of the reasons why the cloud computing is trending so much now. Second thing, I used to carry my laptop everywhere that I go. The reason, without my laptop, I don't have access to my code. So it's an extra overhead that you have to carry your laptop or your iPad everywhere that you go, if you are still working. Now, if I want to go to my hometown, I need not carry my laptop. I can just go there empty handed. I can just get into any of the internet cafe. If I don't have a laptop or a desktop at home, doesn't matter. I can randomly get into any of the internet cafe and then log in from there and do my coding. So that overhead of carrying your systems, carrying your machines is not there. So this happened to me once when I had traveled. I was on a holiday and I had traveled from Bangalore to Hyderabad to attend a function. And in the middle of the function, my manager called and said that Rashmi, something went wrong. Can you just log in and see? We need a hot fix immediately. And I was like, I just had to catch hold of someone who had a laptop, said, Sir, can you please lend your laptop? And then I could fix it then and there in half an hour, which wouldn't have happened with the old system of working. Yeah. So that is one good, very, very good part of cloud computing. Then we have the application layer. Now people are hooked to Netflix and Amazon Prime. We did not have when it was just not there when I was in college and when I started off with my career. We did not have all this. So web apps. So you have app for each and everything now, which makes our life very, very easy. Even paying a bill, watching a video, you have access to anything anywhere around the world, sitting there inside in your room, in the comfort of your room. So that is the achievement, or that is what cloud is making to happen. It's like it's because of cloud. So that's the end of cloud computing session. If anyone have any questions, you can ask me now about cloud computing. So I would, yes.
As of now, there are no questions. You can please proceed, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so let me proceed with middleware. So cloud computing, we just finished all this. Okay, why middleware? Why did I choose, middleware along with cloud computing? So middleware, as the name itself says, it's like a connection between different applications, two different applications or multiple applications, which is installed or which is functioning from different geographical locations. They can talk to each other, and middleware provisions for that, or middleware is the one which connects these applications. So cloud also does, almost the same thing. It's like you have cloud and then you have all those different applications around the cloud, which is connecting to the cloud. Once these applications connect to the cloud, how do they actually talk to each other? That is what is provisioned by middleware. So middleware is a software that bridges gaps between different applications, tools, and databases in order to provide unified services to users. So there are many different tools in the market, middleware tools, and the best part of middleware tools is it's not like, most of you all should be knowing Java coding. So it's like Java, you would have to write thousands of lines of code for your software to be ready. But middleware, to a lot extent, it is already built. There are lots of features which is already built as a tool. Only thing that you have to do is drag that palette, drop it into the designer window, and then configure it. For example, it's like, suppose you want to come up with a, say there is an XML data that is coming in and you want to parse this data. So there are few lines of code that you will have to write when you are doing this in Java. But in middleware, there will already be a already developed palette or shape where you have to just use that shape, give only three things into it. One, your input, which will be like you drag and drop it. Second will be the schema against which it needs to be validated. And if you want, you can the fault part as well. If something goes wrong, then what you want to do. So that's the only thing that you configure. So it is very easy to a lot extent, it's like easy to use middleware tools. That doesn't need too much of programming or writing, thousands of lines of code is not required. So those are the few middleware tools which is very widely used. I have worked on TIBCO, Dell Boomi, and I'm currently working on MuleSoft. So Red Hat JBoss, uh, EAP, IBM WebSphere, Oracle WebLogic, all these are trending tools now in the market. TIBCO, Dell Boomi, and MuleSoft. MuleSoft is trending a lot now in the market. Dell Boomi is very, very widely used in US and Australia. TIBCO was the middleware when I started off my career, and even now they are very much there in the market. TIBCO actually have lots of products which caters to different areas of the business. So I'll take you through each one of them. I mean, at least the ones which I have worked on in the next few slides. The evolution of middleware. So it's definitely not new. It had started in the year, it's like in 1980s, where we used to do data integration. So next in the 90s came the functionality integration. Here, I still remember when I was in college, I have actually studied about, RPC, ORB, MOM, but now, of course, we are not using them, and MOM actually stands for minutes of meeting now in the corporate world. But yes, those were the days where we were using all these for functionality integration. Then in 2000 or mid of 2000 came the service oriented architecture. So SOA. This trended, boomed, and lots of things actually changed along with SOA. So it became more of distributed, functioning than if you putting everything into a central place. So that happened with SOA. Web services came into picture, started getting used very widely when SOA started booming. Enterprise Service Bus and Business Process Manager, which is BPM, which is known as BPM. So when you say Business Process Manager, no one kind of remembers the complete, there's the acronyms which are in use more. So WS, ESB, and BPM. BPM is still there. We have Pega tool, which is one of the leading tool which used for BPM. And Pega developers are very less in number, so it has a very good, it's like future in the market. ESB and WS is just the protocols. It's like web services and the bus or the channel which makes the communication between the application happen. And then came the microservices. Microservices are too much in trending or too much in use nowadays. So people are actually going for microservices. Whenever there is a requirement, they are seeing whether it can be put as a microservice. Now, what do you mean by microservices? Microservices are independent, which you can develop independently, which you can deploy and test independently. So develop independently is one thing, but testing independently. So you need not integrate this particular piece of code with anything else for it to work. So it's like it can be tested and also deployed, which will not have an impact on the bigger architecture. So those are microservices. When I started off my career, it's like with all this evolution, what happened is the model in which we used to work, the SDLC, software development lifecycle, that process also changed along with all this. So we used to use waterfall model where everything is very well defined, signed off by the client. So as I said, SDLC, which we have in our software engineering book. So, software development life cycle, where you have the requirement gathering, then you have the design, then you have the development, then the testing, and then package and delivery. And every phase, what used to happen is after the requirement gathering is done completely, signed off, then we go for the design of it. Once the design is signed off, then we go for the development. So that is waterfall model. But now waterfall model is not used that much, because all these SOA and microservices, all this kind of, broke it down to independent modules, which are like small modules which can be developed and delivered uh, independently. So we started following agile methodology. In agile, what happens is your release cycles are defined. Maybe it's like every 3 weeks or every 4 weeks you have something which is going into production. I still remember my first project with Infosys that had run for almost like close to 2 years. We had put nothing into production. So we were like, the requirement gathering to it getting deployed into production or going live happened after 2 years. So that's how it used to work. But now it is not like that. I have releases going in every month. Sometimes every 2 weeks, there is something that goes into production, because that can be delivered without impacting any of the existing architecture. And it can also be, as I said, it can also be tested independently. So it doesn't, and later on, you can just integrate it. So that's how it works. The working model has changed a lot with all this evolution of middleware. So now in 2020, we have the cryptography, distributed ledger, smart contract, and there is too much of decentralization. So this is the main aspect or the main evolution that has happened. In the earlier years, it was centralized, and now it is all distributed and decentralized. So that's the middleware architecture. So as I told you, it's just a small example of the middleware architecture. So there are like which interact with each other using the middleware. So these applications would have their own systems, as you are able to see. One is system of records, one is system of engagement, and they have their own independent small systems which lies within that application. The back office processes are there. They have their own database. They have a CRM layer. They have an API service and it is hosted on the public cloud. And on the other end, your systems of engagement has it has a web, it has a mobile, Internet of Things, and then it is there on the public cloud. So one is on the private cloud, one is on the public cloud, and these are like the big box or the blue part that you see, that is the application. Inside the applications, you have different small systems, and as an application and at a system level, they have to interact with each other, which is actually facilitated by the middleware. So middleware, what they actually do is the basic things that they do is validate, enrich, and transform. So when I say validate, it's like every application could be talking in different languages. So one can be a mainframe, the other one maybe it is developed on C, or maybe it is developed on Java, and the messaging types or models would be different. One might be using XML, the other one might be using JSON, who doesn't understand XML. So middleware, what it does is it will take this message, it will validate and see that, okay, is the XML structure correct? And then it will see that if there is something that needs to be changed before I give this to the other system. So when I say that, it's like maybe from system one, the source system, I might get the postal code of a particular place. But in the second system or the destination system, they don't understand what postal codes are. They just understand when you give them the city name. So what you do, what middleware does is it might have a static table with all the postal codes and the city names, or it might connect to a different system which stores this data. So it retrieves the data from there and it maps, okay, for this postal code, this is the city name that needs to be sent to the destination system. This is called as enrichment and lookups and enrichments. And the third part, which is transformation. So say, for example, there is a computing logic that is required. It's like, when the message comes in or the input comes in, I have, say, there is money which is given to me in rupees, and the end system doesn't understand. You have to convert it into a different money format and give it to them. So that is called as transformation. Second is protocol transformation, where your incoming system, they have XML as their input, and your outgoing system or the destination system doesn't understand XML, they just understand JSON. So you can convert the XML message to the JSON message in middleware. Middleware does that. So this is called as transformation. It will transform XML to JSON and sends it to the destination system. So with middleware, to a lot extent, it so happens that these end systems, which are usually quite rigid, some of them are legacy systems where making any kind of changes or enhancements takes too much of time. So middleware facilitates all this. So there is something that has changed in the end system, and the source system has to cater to that need. Basically, middleware will take care. Middleware will say that, okay, it's okay, you send me in the same format that you're sending to me. Whatever your end system needs, I will transform and send it to them. So that's the beauty of it. Service oriented architecture. So this, we already spoke about it. So service-oriented architecture is a style of software design where the application, the components communicate with each other over a network. Web services is nothing but your HTTPS. When you log into internet and when you type HTTPS, that is what web services. And web services uses two types of protocols, SOAP and REST. REST is in picture from past few years. So when we started off, we used to use SOAP, and SOAP used to be a little rigid. It used to you need to have a proper structure defined when you use SOAP protocol for web services. So here what happens is your application, your middleware, your end application, everyone have to agree upon a given structure. And we come up with a WSDL. WSDL is nothing but where you are defining all this. So WSDL will have a SOAP envelope which will have a header, which will have a body. In the body, you would define what is the input schema structure, what is the output schema structure, what is the error structure. So all this needs to be defined, and this WSDL will be commonly used. It will be a common WSDL between the system which will be sending the message and the system which will be receiving the message. Otherwise, it will fail. If the structure did not match, then it will fail. That's how web services used to work earlier. Now also SOAP is widely used in corporate industry, but REST is also has picked up a lot because you need not define the structure. So you need not even define the schema. It can treat anything that is coming in as a string, as a text. So basically that overhead of defining the schemas and structures is not there with REST. Second thing is the same service can be used by multiple applications, and these applications might use a similar structure of the message, but there is a possibility that certain fields which is a required or a mandatory field for system A is not mandatory for system B. So because you're not the messages are not tightly coupled, or the protocol is not tightly coupling those message structures with it, all these end systems can use the same web service. So that's the rest and SOAP differences. ESP, so enterprise service bus, which is like a channel, which is like a tunnel to which all your applications from all the sites they will connect. They will put the message into the ESP, and it will go keep delivering it into the applications that is required to get it. So bus, what does bus do? It will pick you up from one point, and then our bus, normal bus, which will pick you up from one point. It will drop you to wherever you want to go, right? That is what enterprise service bus also does. It will pick up the messages from one application, it will deliver it to another application which is waiting for it. This is how they actually look. So SOVA already explained, enterprise service bus. As you are able to see, it's like a channel, and you have different applications connecting to it and interacting with each other. And then you have web services, everything connects to the internet. Microservices and APIs. So microservices, as already explained, they are independent modules. So you have highly maintainable and testable, loosely coupled, independently deployable, which are organized around business capabilities. So that is the actual definition of microservices. Application programming interface, API. So many you would have heard about APIs, but you may not actually understand what an API means. So APIs, there are APIs which are already readily available in the market. For example, Salesforce. So if I want to connect from Boomi to Salesforce, I already have a connector in Boomi which have all the basic configuration that is required to be connected to Salesforce. Only thing that I have to do is just provide with the URL and the authentication. So APIs actually is like a gateway, or which facilitates the web communication between applications. So that's what even the definition says. They are the medium of communication between microservices or any other web services. Coming to middleware tools, so basically I have picked up 3 of them: TIBCO, Boomi, and MuleSoft. All the 3 on which I have worked, or currently I'm working on. So TIBCO was very much in trending when I started my career in 2005. So it was just picking up at that point of time, and then it flourished later. So I still remember when someone came to me and said that, okay, Rashmi, you're put into enterprise solution stream. Now, I did not even know what enterprise solution is at that point of time. And then they said that you will be working on TIBCO. So I had never heard about TIBCO. And then I went to Google, I typed TIBCO to find out what is it. And the only information that I got from Google was the information bus company, and that's it, nothing else. So then I went to my lead, my manager, and I told them that I have no clue what this is. And then I was like, they provided, there was one group of people who were like identified to work on TIBCO, and then we got the trainings. And at that point of time, basically we had zero information in Google about TIBCO. But now if you go to Google and type TIBCO, you get all the documents, you even get a platform to work on. Those days it used to be very it is still a licensed tool, and it used to be very expensive, and you did not have any access to this if you are an outsider. So it's only if you're tied up with the company and they are using this tool, it's only then you had an access to it. But now it is not like that. You can always, it's though not an open source, but you have lots of information about these tools available there in Google. So you can, and these are the tools. The next two tools, along with TIPCO, are the ones which is very much there in the market. And uh, as cloud and middleware are very tightly coupled, they go hand in hand. There are lots of job opportunities, and it's like there are certifications as well for each one of this. Basically, you have AWS certification, you have cloud computing certification, you have Azure certification. Similarly, you have certification for TIPCO, Boomi, and MuleSoft as well. So the material that you need to do the certification is mostly free. You can read through, but the certifications are you will have to pay and take it. So coming to TIPCO, it's a highly reliable, scalable, and secure services. So this kind of remains the same for all the middleware tools. It is highly reliable, which means that your messages are never lost. It is stored somewhere. So scalable. If you want to add something to an already developed code, it is quite easy to do that with any of these middleware tools. And secure services. So that's about TIPCO. And on the right hand side, the box that you're able to see, that's how the tool kind of looks. So there is a palette library from where you can pick up the palettes and drag it and drop it into the middle part, and then you can just connect them. So and use them. So this is what I was saying. Suppose you want to parse XML, there will be an XML parser palette available. You have to just drag that, drop it into the middle box, and then give your configuration and connect it to the next one. Say you want to retrieve something from the database. You have a database palette, just drag and drop. You have to do the basic configuration. You have to just give the URL, user ID, password, and the table name from where you want to retrieve the data. You can even write a query if you want. If you want to retrieve only certain fields from the database, you still have a provision to do that. So it goes on like that. This where there is hardly any coding. You don't go and code something. But TIPCO basically it writes code on its own. Whenever you drag and drop a palette, there is some code that gets written automatically by TIPCO, and that appears in the format of XSLT. So if you want to alter something here, I wouldn't recommend that, but still you can go to the XSLT. If you go to the XSLT and change something there, it will get reflected here as well. So those files are called as .process files. So that is TIPCO. Next is Dell Boomi. So Boomi also, though I had heard about it, I had not got a chance to work on Boomi. It was, I should say, from last 3 years, I'm working on Boomi, and it's a wonderful tool. It's pretty much similar to TIPCO. There are different features as well. Each one of them have their own features. So TIPCO, when it got developed, it was developed for a physical server thing. Now they have adapted themselves or evolved into the cloud computing part. But Boomi, to a lot extent, was designed for a cloud computing setup. So only thing that I have to do is log in to the Boomi over the internet, and I can connect to the code that I'm working on. So that's the difference. So TIPCO, as I said, now they are there in the market in the cloud, but we had to actually install the software and all those. We used to get the infra, and then we have to install the software. So now Boomi is more of a PaaS. So your software is already there in the Boomi website, Boomi Cloud Hub. You have to just log in and start using the software straight away. So this is an example of PAS. And there are a lot of APIs which is already present in Boomi. So it's readily available. There are readily available connectors. There are readily available APIs. So it makes our life very, very easy as a developer. So this is how it is. Whenever you are in Boomi, you have the same setup. You have palettes, which is called as shapes in Boomi, and you drag and drop them, do similar kind of configuration, and you have those arrow marks which will show how and where it is connecting, and you can put your conditions based on this and take it forward. Next one is so this is one which is already ready, and you drag and drop them. Recommended demonstration ideas. Where do I have to say how it is still evolving? Even we are doing this version as 3.0, and basically works on API Studio. So it is as a developer, it is not as easy as Info or LP. You will have to do some coding. People who are good in Java would actually find a lot more easier to work on. But you can have very different features, inbuilt features, especially when it comes to security, when it comes to managing something which is already developed. It's a lot more easier with Mule, and that is one of the reason why it is said as, it is a SaaS, software as a service. So you already have your software which is almost developed, pre-built. Lots of things are pre-built, and only the coding part is what you have to take care as a developer. There are many other things which has already been taken care of. And I missed one thing with Boomi. So Boomi is one tool which is self-versioned. So it's like in the corporate world, you have tools. I mean, you have your code, you code, you have a team of say 10 people, all 10 will be picking up. There is a possibility that you people might pick up the same code for your development. So there is always a versioning tool where you check in this code so that who is the person who is actually working on it. But Boomi, the advantage is it is self-versioned, so you don't need an explicit versioning tool to maintain the versions of Boomi. So at the end, there is a revision history. So when you click on the revision history, it will actually give you the entire list of who worked on it, and also you have a provision to go to that particular revision and see what was existing earlier. So that's a very good feature about Boomi. Coming back to MuleSoft, so this is how MuleSoft looks, but it is not this simple. MuleSoft have a lot many other things as well. So this is the Anypoint Studio. The one which you are able to see here on the screen is the Anypoint Studio. But apart from this, we have the Mule platform. You have the web service client. So you need all of them for it to kind of work. So as I said, from a developer's perspective, as a developer, it's a little more, extra coding, or it's like you have a little more coding that you have to do when it comes to Mule. So that's about cloud computing and middleware tools. You can come up with your questions now.
Thank you, Rashmi ma'am, for the excellent talk on today's topic, which covered various concepts like types of clouds, cloud computing services, its advantages, cloud architecture, middleware evolution, architecture, and various middleware tools. It was extremely informative. Now I request Srimati Ramya SK to handle the query session. Over to Ramya ma'am.
Good afternoon, all. So, as of now, we have four questions, and two questions are repeated. So, they are asking, the participants are asking about how to secure data on cloud.
How to secure data on cloud. So the cloud providers basically have their own inbuilt security systems. So as I had told, they have multiple layers of security that is put on. So it is, as a user, for me, I need not bother about how to secure data. For example, we have our Facebook, right? So a lot of my personal data is actually there, or job sites, for example, Monster, where you actually give lots of personal information, your date of birth, your sometimes to an extent of even giving your passport number. So these data is secured by the cloud providers. Okay, so as a user, you need not bother much about it. They have their own security policies and they have multiple layers of security, and they have a security team as well, which will constantly, their own teams, which will constantly try to hack this systems, and they keep putting patches on their security systems just to ensure that your data is always secure. So that is one of the reason. If you find out a bug in say for example Facebook, if you're able to hack someone's account, you need not fix it basically. Like, just if you are even able to hack and get information about any other user, uh, and you report this bug to Facebook, they will pay you in crores. So that's how, that's how or highly secured these systems are. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Rashmi. Now, we have one more question. Malapriya, one participant named Malapriya, has asked about how give the information about cloud brokers.
Okay, cloud brokers is a different concept altogether. So it's pretty much, I have to say, is similar to your cloud computing thing that I just now explained. So the broker systems, basically, it's okay. Let me just compare with your ESB layer. It's something similar to that. So ESB was something which was lying in your physical servers. Broker would kind of look similar to that, which facilitates the communication. Cloud brokers, right? So it is like an independent channel which facilitates the communication between different applications. So that's cloud broker.
Okay. Thank you, Rashmi. So I think in the chat box we can see uh, brief about community cloud.
Yeah, community cloud is also in existence actually now. Apart from public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud, community cloud is also there. So, community cloud is something which you have these organizations, different organizations which come together. So, it's like, okay, for example, our college and sister organization that our principal mentioned. So say for example JSS and all the different subsidiaries of JSS come together and they purchase a cloud. So that becomes your community cloud. So all of them would be using, it's a kind of an extension of your private cloud. I mean your public cloud. Okay. Anything else?
Okay. I think no questions in the chat box. One second. Thank you, Rashmi. So now question answer session is over. Now I would like to just give some information to our students regarding opportunities in abroad. As you have visited London, Chicago, Germany, Singapore, so you will be having a lot of information regarding that career opportunities in abroad. So I request you to give some kind of tips to our students. So what next after their graduation, what they have to do, something like that.
Okay, so as we are dealing with the cloud computing middleware tools, what I want to say is each of these, as I already mentioned, have their own certifications, and it is very easily accessible. The data or the information that or the material that you need to
Please
uh,
mention few cloud
do
certifications.
basically for these certifications is already available there in their own websites. So if you just go to tip, for example, Tipco is like tipco.com, tipco.com, and then you have the material available there, and then there will be links which would take you and explain you how you can take these certifications. Similarly, you have it for AWS as in Boomi and Muse as well. So, which was not the case when we were when I started off my career. It was all rigid, and there was no. It was not, just not accessible. But now it is not like that. It's like an open market. But so certifications, doing certifications. I mean, before you jump into that, just decide on which domain or which technology, basically, because there are lots of them now. So, which technology you want to take up, and then see whether you can do any certifications on that particular technology, which actually helps you in getting, you know, a highly paid job. Second thing, getting out of India or going abroad. So basically, mine it had always been deputation. So I worked with Infosys, and through Infosys, I went to US and UK, and then I joined HCL, and through HCL, I went to Singapore, and I came to Germany. But you can also apply for jobs outside your country uh, on your own. So any I mean soon after your graduation without any experience getting a job outside is almost near to not possible, because they do look for an expertise in that particular field. So my advice would be, please get into the jobs in India, get your experience, hands on experience, which is very very important. Even if you take certification, you would know or know the subject at a very high level. But when people like me come for taking interviews, you will not be able to clear it, because usually I go with the concepts and how do you use these basically the questions will be scenario based. How do you use this tool? So that would be the main questions. So you can answer those only when you have a hands on experience, at least to some extent of practical knowledge, where you have worked in a corporate world. Because the way the work happens in the corporate world is completely different from the atmosphere in which we grow up or we learn. It's There are lots of processes that gets followed there. The actual SDLC that you read through in the software engineering book, you will actually see that getting implemented. And coming to the core technical skill set, reading through the books is one thing, but actually when there is a real time scenario, you get to see that there is a lot more into it. So I would still advise, get upskill yourself, get hands on experience, and then look for jobs outside. Germany is one of the places where you can apply for a job seekers visa. Come here, stay here for 6 months and search for a job. That's possible. Singapore is a place where you can apply for the job from India. So there are consultancies sitting in Singapore who would come. I mean, they will approach you, and mostly they pick up the resumes or the profiles from Monster. Then US and UK, I mean, I have not seen them, taking people directly from the market who is in India, but the job portals are still there. You can apply for jobs from there, but as I told you, mostly they will look for people who have either a domain knowledge. Say, for example, if it is a banking project, they look for whether you know anything about banking or have you worked on banking, and technical knowledge. Say, for example, if you say that I am a Java expert, then they actually see how many years of experience do you have. So 2 to 3 years minimum is recommended.
Thank you, Rashmi. Now we have many more questions in the chat box. So one participant named Chetan, he has asked, is it possible to restore data in cloud?
Ramya, your voice broke. I couldn't hear.
We have many more questions in the chat box. So one participant named Chetan, he is asking about, is it possible to restore data in cloud?
It is possible to restore data in cloud, which has already been taken care of by the cloud providers. So yes, the data, as I said, in a physical server, basically it's like we have a DR mechanism. So they have something similar to that inbuilt in cloud as well.
Okay.
Okay, one
So
example of it. See, you have your iCloud, you have your cloud, right? So it's which you have a iPhone, so you have a iCloud, or if you have an MI phone, you have your MI cloud, so you have data there. And by chance, the data gets wiped out, you can always connect or call the support. Uh, the support people and ask them to restore your data, so they will do it for you. It is doable.
okay. So the next question, um, if we delete personal data from cloud, how the data gets deleted or disgraded?
Depends on what level of deletion happens. So, as for example, it's like you have your Outlook, right? So, where you get your mails. So, there are multiple levels of deletion. So, when you just delete it, what will happen? It will go to the delete folder. You delete it from there as well. It will get deleted, but that data kind of gets stored in the archive for a certain number of days, and then post that it will get deleted permanently. So that's how the deletion happens. It's not that you delete from here and it's gone forever. And there are also softwares, it's like at any given point of time, to a certain period of time, especially after you delete it, your data is still retrievable by executing certain explicit, which for example, there will be like this, the IT department, which is extended to your intelligence department. Say there is a crime investigation that is going on, and you would have seen that, okay, though the data is deleted from the phone, it is stored somewhere else, which is still retrievable. So that happens, but that also happens only for if the data is not used.
Okay. Can you hear me? The next question, they are asking about cloud-based databases.
Cloud-based databases. So it's very much the same physical database. There is no much of a difference. The only difference is your databases. For example, you are working in the college now, so studying in the college now. So you have your database programs that you would run as part of your curriculum, right? So there, what happens? you have your client machine, and then you have your server machine, to which all of you all will connect to that one particular server, and then you run your queries, or you run your, you retrieve the data. So it is the same. Instead of having this database on the physical server, it is there on the cloud. And it can also have, the magnitude of data that it can store, and the speed at which it can be is much faster.
Okay. So the next question, what's the difference between cloud computing and mobile computing?
There is the mobile computing is it's only the device basically. So at the end of the day, your data is actually stored in the cloud, even though you are using your mobile web app, right? That is what is your mobile computing. So the device that you're using, and it is a full, it is like the your SaaS, where you have the software given to you as a web service. But on the other hand, cloud computing have a little more extra leverage, that you can go and do your installation and coding. So it's a bigger space. That's the only difference.
Okay. Thank you. So one, how inter-cloud communication happens? The next question.
Intercloud communication happens through the same channels that I took you through now. So there are different channels through which it happens. It can be a middleware layer, or it can be a direct, API calls. So that's how the intercommunication happens.
Okay. So one more last question. Uh, how is service-oriented architecture related to cloud computing?
Okay, so it's like, see, service oriented architecture is just a design model. Okay, how it is related to cloud computing? Basically, service-oriented architecture also emphasizes on having this independent distributed architecture model. And cloud also, what is the similarity between the two? And then I'll tell you how they both are related. So service-oriented architecture, as I told you, it is service-driven, and mostly, they had thought about this design as independent modules, which is testable and deployable. So similar to your microservices. When you host this on the cloud, that is what is cloud computing basically. So SOA is a design, cloud computing is a container, which will help you execute this design. So that is what they are.
Okay. So the last question, Rashmi, what features are used to secure data?
There are lots of features. As I told you, these are all inbuilt to the cloud systems, and there are different security policies which will be applied by each of these providers. Uh, when it comes to okay, we are talking about the data storage. As I told you, it's like. Uh, what to say, it's like multiple levels of authentication, uh, two or three levels of authentication. For example, it's like if I want to access your data, it is not possible to a lot extent until and unless I have your mobile and I have your fingerprint. So that's one level of data security. Second thing is, somehow someone you know uh, got this, ran some code which could hack this and got into that first level. User ID password is given. The second level of authentication is also done. Somehow he could bypass the fingerprint authentication. There will be another two or three layers of security that will be put by the cloud provider. And they have their own security policy which will be applied to that.
Okay. Thank you, Rashmi. Thank you. Thank you for
Okay.
answering all the questions.
Thank you, Rashmi ma'am and Ramya. Participants, please note, certificate will be sent through mail in 2 or 3 working days, and feedback form will be accepted only for 20 minutes after the session. Now I request Srimati Jyoti Lakshmi Ji Kawa, Assistant Professor of Computer Science, to render vote of thanks. Over to you, Jyoti ma'am.
Thank you, Rajita. Very good afternoon, one and all. It's my great privilege to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to our beloved principal, Professor Sainath Malligemadu, for his constant guidance and support. Thank you, sir. On behalf of our management and college, I would like to express my deep sense of gratitude to our today's resource person, Srimati Rashmi Balachandran, for focusing on cloud computing and middleware tools in a broader perspective which benefited our participants. Thank you, madam. I would like to thank Srimati G.R. Sumitra, HOD of Electronics and IQAC Coordinator, for her kind support. Thank you, ma'am. I now thank our head of the department, Srimati K. Sukrita, convener of today's webinar, for organizing this event. Thank you, ma'am. I would like to thank our staff members and technical support team for making this event a successful one. Finally, I thank all the academicians, research scholars, software professionals, and students who actively took